Good morning, everyone. We will go ahead and get started here. So welcome to our 911 Remembrance event. So I'm Kevin Mcgowan. I'm an associate professor in the Elementary and Early Childhood Education Department, and I'm also the faculty associate for the Martin Richard Institute for Social Justice. Now, on September 11th, 2001, I was a pre-kindergarten teacher for the DC public school system. So I worked at Davis Elementary School. And what I remember most, of course, is the three teachers, the three DC public school teachers, and the three sixth grade students, all 11, who lost their lives on that day. They were in the airplane that left Washington Dulles Airport, headed to Los Angeles to work on a National Geographic project. So what brings me solace in thinking about that is during the last moments of those three young students' lives, if they couldn't be with their parents or their other primary caregivers, they were there with teachers who loved and cared for them in those last moments of their young lives. So with that, I will introduce our Student Government Association President, Tyler Charis, who will bring you some welcoming remarks.
Hello, and good morning, everyone. 20 years ago today, 2,996 people laid their heads on their pillows, getting ready for their next day of work. 20 years ago tomorrow, the world as we knew it changed forever. 20 years. 20 years of never forgetting. 20 years of seeing the same empty chair at the kitchen table. 20 years of asking God why. 20 years of each and every one of our lives being changed forever. I was 2 years old when the September 11th attacks occurred. I was probably sitting around in the living room watching Thomas the Tank Engine, blissfully unaware of what was happening in that moment. Blissfully unaware of how my world and yours would have permanently changed in the blink of an eye. The September 11th attacks have had an extraordinary impact on all our lives. Many of you here recall that day like it was yesterday. Some of you may be too young to remember, or not even born yet. And imagine that for a second. There is now a class at Bridgewater State who is learning about these events in their history classes. More and more students only know of a post-9/11 world, and yet we all pause and reflect to remember. Each year, people recognize the lasting effects that this tragedy has had on both our individual lives and how we operate as a country. And each year, we try to do our part as BSU Bears to remember those lost and pick up that mantle of work, to continue the unrelenting work of community members and first responders by lending a helping hand, honoring the fallen by sharing their stories, and giving back. That will be how we honor those we lost. That will be how we never forget. That will be how we move forward together as a Bridgewater community. Thank you for coming. As BSU Bears, we will continue to reflect on the importance of this day together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler, for those opening remarks. And now I will welcome Reverend Beth Stotts, co-chair of Greater Bridgewater Interfaith Council, who will lead us in a moment of reflection and prayer.
Please join me in a moment, whether you want to bow your head, close your eyes, hold out your hands, however you find a meditative place. Please join me. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." For all who continue to grieve and all who died in the events of September 11th and its aftermath. On those whose homes, livelihood, and psychological well-being were destroyed or compromised. On those displaced. On the devastation of city and countryside, both in this country and throughout the world, we grieve and we pray. May we find grace. May we awaken justice. May we bind up our own wounds and those of the suffering stranger. May we awaken justice. When in our fear we retreat and isolate, when we seek security only based on military might and not on right relationships, we pray. That all who continue to suffer may find healing and the nations of the world will find peace. That growing understanding among faithful peoples will lead to a shared vision of peace. That profound cooperation among nations which share the earth may lead to structures of peace. That oppressive economic and military structures may be transformed, and structures that may grow that lead to peace. O God, Spirit of life, hear our hopes and make us faithful in your ways of love and justice. God of all nations, while walls still divide and fear still separates, nudge us along that we might be healed and become healers and helpers on this good earth you have given us to steward. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Stotts, for reminding us that we are all interconnected by way of spirit and grounded on this wonderful place that we call Earth. So now we'll welcome our President, Clark, who will offer his remarks.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for gathering as a community today to remember and to reflect. Thank you also to our speakers and to the organizers of this important event. Every generation has a profound moment that is forever seared in its collective memory. A tragic event that inflicts great pain, that so upends the world that we feel lost and disoriented for a while. A powerful experience that lives with us forever and whose consequences affect us for decades. For my grandparents, it was the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, a day which will live in infamy. For my parents' generation, it was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. For our generation, it is the horrendous morning of September 11th, 2001. And as Tyler reminded us, we are mindful that many of our students were not even born until after 9/11, but that the echo of that day continues to reverberate throughout their entire lives. None of us forgets where we were that morning. Together, we witnessed the unfolding tragedy and horror that was visited upon so many innocent lives. We remember the thousands of people who lost their lives in an instant. We remember the last cell phone calls placed to loved ones. We remember our alumnus, William Hunt, class of 1992, who was a vice president with Euro Brokers on the 84th floor of the South Tower. He was one of 60 people in his company who did not survive. He was only 32 years old. Our hearts go out to Bill's family, his wife Jennifer, his daughter Emma, and we also extend our condolences to his parents Diane and Larry and his brother Daniel, all three of whom are BSU alumni. We remember the extraordinary bravery of the passengers of Flight 93, whose final testament was the countless unknown lives that they saved that day. We remember the heroism of courageous and selfless first responders who ran toward, in, and up the stairs of burning buildings, who gave their last moment of devotion, saving others without a thought for their own safety. In the shock of that moment, we also remember that our country came together as one people, united by our values, and motivated by a collective determination to support one another. And especially now, expressions of national unity remain as important as ever. We were, and we are, proud to be Americans. And since that fateful day 20 years ago, we remember the many sacrifices made by countless people in the cause of peace and justice. We remember the thousands of servicemen and servicewomen who defended our freedom overseas and here at home, and the many who were wounded or perished in defense of our liberty. We are heartbroken, but very proud of former BSU student Johanni Rosario, who served her country with honor and dignity while trying valiantly to save the lives of children, women, and men who sought to flee tyranny. Johanni will also be recalled as one of the last lives lost as a result of 9/11. And while the U.S. and state flags will be lowered tomorrow by order of the President of the United States and our governor, the Martin Richard Peace flag behind me has been raised to fly over us beginning today and through the International Day of Peace later this month. The Peace flag also reminds us of another very painful day, but mostly it inspires us. It inspires us to live up to our highest ideals. It inspires us to be the better angels of our nature. It inspires us not to be ministered unto, but to minister. It inspires us to carry on our mission as a university and as human beings to foster understanding, to advance justice, to pursue peace, and to care for one another. Above all else, it inspires us to be an example of love in this world. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our Executive Director of Public Safety and Chief of Police, David Tillinghast, for a few remarks.
Thank you, President Clark. I am grateful for the opportunity to participate in this 9/11 remembrance and to speak on behalf of all public safety, not only law enforcement, but also our friends in the fire service. I want to particularly acknowledge the presence here of my colleagues, Chief Christopher DeMonte of the Bridgewater Police Department and Deputy Chief John Roshars of the Bridgewater Fire Department, and members of my own Bridgewater State University Police Department. Where were you on 9/11 is a question that for many of us still elicits an emotional reaction. I was here at BSU on that bright, sunny September day so many years ago, just a regular work day. Strangely enough, not all of my memories of 9/11 and its aftermath are bad. The heroes, the patriotism that was stirred, and the outpouring of support for first responders. But as time has marched on and years have passed, we might have a tendency to forget those innocent people going about their daily lives on that day. Ordinary people in all walks of life, of every ethnic background and of every faith, people who had no idea that they would never again see their loved ones. And we might forget the first responders who, without a thought to their safety, ran into those buildings with the noble goal of saving the lives of strangers. But we must never forget. We must not forget the sacrifice of so many, or how this one day made us realize that we are not immune to terror attacks. So I consider it our collective responsibility to spend some time, like we are doing today, to ensure that we do not ever forget what happened on 9/11. It is perhaps especially important for the younger generations to keep our shared memory of 9/11 alive, even if they didn't personally witness the events of that day, and to understand its implications. They are the stakeholders of our nation's future. And so it behooves us to pause with gratitude to reflect on the ultimate sacrifice on that day of so many members of law enforcement and the fire service. We must never forget those lives that were lost, yet we live on while they are no longer here. We owe them this day and this remembrance. Thank you.
So thank you, Chief Tillingast, and again to Reverend Stotts, President Clark, and Tyler for reminding us that we all have a responsibility as citizens of an open and pluralistic society. So we don't get a chance or an opportunity or an option to be cafeteria shoppers when it comes to social justice. We can't pick and choose which social justice issues we will attend to. We have to attend to all of them. And it's an interdependent collective action that encourages us to do so. So now I will introduce Mr. Michael Dutton, Bridgewater Town Manager, who will offer his remarks.
Thank you very much. President Clark, faculty, staff, students, thank you for allowing me a few moments to talk about something that, quite frankly, I have never spoken about publicly. At precisely 8:55 on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, I was a relatively young chair of the Board of Selectmen in my little town. I was young once. I'd run into town hall really quickly to sign some papers, and as I walked in, Alice, good old Alice, our selectman's office assistant, looked up from her desk and asked if I'd heard the news. I said, "No, what news?" She said, "A plane struck the World Trade Center." And my first thought was, what a freak accident. For those that study history of New York City, you know in 1945, after the war in Europe had come to an end, a U.S. Army Air Force B-25 was on its way to Newark Airfield, was flying above Midtown Manhattan in a really thick fog. It inadvertently struck the Empire State Building, which was then the tallest building in the world. It was a freak accident. And that's what I thought on that beautiful September 11th. Tuesday, September 11th, 2001 was a beautifully clear day, not unlike today. But really, it couldn't have been a really bad weather accident. Maybe it was an autopilot malfunction. Maybe it was a missed approach to LaGuardia or Kennedy airports, or like 1945 to Newark Airport, where that plane was headed. Not once did it really cross my mind that it could be an act at all nefarious, purposely destructive, or worse, actually planned. People often say that when major world events happen, people always remember exactly where they were when they heard the news. I remember with excruciating detail where I was, why I was where I was, and who else was there. I noticed those completely irrelevant things, like the floor was kind of filthy. But seared into my memory was the look on Alice's face. That look told me more than any news station could. That look told me that something horribly wrong happened in this world. So no one really knew Alice's background. She had worked in the selectman's office for a number of years, but before working for that small town in coastal Massachusetts, Alice actually had a career which took her all over the world. She and her late husband worked for the State Department. She had seen firsthand the best of the world and the worst of the world. The look on her face told me that this was, in fact, the worst. On that September 11th, I was a father of a 2-year-old son and a 7-year-old stepdaughter. How would I explain this to them? How would they react? How could I protect them from the worst attributes of the world, but make sure they always engaged in the best parts of the world? Those were my thoughts. But quite frankly, I have no recollection of the answers I came up with. And I think that's the nature of adrenaline and crisis. It leaves you with a vivid picture of the moment, but conveniently allows you to forget those difficult thoughts. So today, my son is a senior in college. He's actively engaging in many different communities. He's started to learn Mandarin. For some reason, he's read War and Peace twice. He is living a worldly life. My daughter, who is a very proud BSU graduate, is leading teams at Mass General Brigham. She's helping people of all races, creeds, religions, and persuasions. She has found her own path by creating her own path. Somehow, as I thought about it, despite the events of 2001, September 11th, they proved to be resilient. And as I've since learned, kids usually are resilient. But sometimes adults are a different story. Remember Alice? Alice was 65 years old on September 11th, 2001. Now that's retirement age for most people in the municipal sector, and if you're in the municipal sector, you know that that's either well over retirement age or retirement age. But I can tell you today, September 11th, 2021, Alice still sits at that same seat and does the same important work she was doing in 2001. She's 85 years old. She works because she believes she has a job to do, despite the challenges that come with age and the work itself. She is purposeful about what she's doing. Alice wasn't beaten down and discouraged by September 11th. Alice knew there was more good in the world than there was bad. She had seen it firsthand. And she knew her contribution to the world was her continuity, her dedication to her community, her stability, and her resilience. People really are resilient. I think we're all resilient. But there are 2,996 people who died that day in 2001. They weren't allowed to be resilient, and their families have tried very, very hard to be resilient. Our obligation to them is to move ahead, build our communities, provide continuity, provide stability, learn our own lessons from 9/11, but to always remember, to never forget, and to teach our children to engage in their communities, whatever those communities may be, so that September 11th, 2001 will never be repeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for that message of reminding us that we all have our individual responsibilities to the collective good, and that each minute of every day is a chance for us to demonstrate that connection to the collective good. So now I would like to welcome Brian Duchene from the Veterans Center, who will bring us some reflections on veterans who served and lost their lives in the fight for freedom.
On September 11, 2001, when the second plane hit the South Tower at 9:46 a.m., I was here as a 23-year-old in my junior year, inside Boyden Hall. At least I would have been if I wasn't running late for class. Instead, I was right there, on that path between Boyden and Tillinghast Hall. Though I made it to class that day, I don't remember what my professor spoke about, or even what that class was. Instead, I remember the time after that class, when the campus center was abuzz with chatter, as faculty, staff, and students tried to make sense of what exactly was happening to our nation, and what that meant for me as a soldier in the United States Army Reserve. Though it took a few years, I eventually got what would be my second call to active duty. I left Bridgewater behind again and embarked on a new mission supporting soldiers transitioning from civilian life to active duty to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like these soldiers, I was only in the military part-time, but like so many Americans, we were there when called upon. Since September 11, 2001, over 6,500 American service members have given their life for this country. Today, as we consider those losses to this nation because of terrorism, we should always remember that those who sacrificed their lives did so not because of political motivations or for a greater presence on the world stage. Those 6,500 Americans died because they swore to serve the United States of America, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. On August 26, 2021, one of our own Marine Sergeant Johanni Rosario fulfilled that pledge with her life. In choosing to become a United States Marine, Sergeant Rosario demonstrated a courage and sense of duty beyond that of most individuals, one that made her willing to leave behind the relative safety and predictability of college because she believed in something greater than herself. The cost of freedom is a debt that is never fulfilled, but it is one that must be vigilantly defended. Today, as we remember those killed in the September 11th attacks, I ask you to remember the price of freedom paid by those asked to bring justice to the families and loved ones killed on that day 20 years ago. I'm proud of my service to this nation, and I'm proud that I've been asked to represent the military and veteran community of Bridgewater State University today. Most of all, I'm proud that I can call Sergeant Rosario sister in arms. I am proud that I am part of a community that is triumphantly represented by her heroic sacrifice. As we have been repeatedly asked to never forget the events of September 11, 2001, I ask you to also never forget the sacrifice of Marine Sergeant Johanni Rosario and the more than 6,500 service members that gave their lives for fighting for us, fighting for the war on terror. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Ms. Lauren Filoni, Executive Director of Academic Affairs.
Good morning. Billy Collins was our nation's poet laureate from 2001 to 2003. He wrote this poem to read before Congress on the first anniversary, dedicating it to the victims of September 11th and their survivors. The names. Yesterday, I lay awake in the palm of the night. A soft rain stole in, unhelped by any breeze. And when I saw the silver glaze on the windows, I started with A, with Ackerman, as it happened, then Baxter and Calabro, Davis and Eberling, names falling into place as droplets fell through the dark. Names printed on the ceiling of the night. Names slipping around a watery bend. 26 willows on the bank of a stream. In the morning, I walked out barefoot among thousands of flowers, heavy with dew like the eyes of tears, and each had a name. Fiore inscribed on a yellow petal, then Gonzalez and Hahn, Ishikawa and Jenkins, names written in the air and stitched into the cloth of the day. A name under a photograph taped to a mailbox. monogram on a torn shirt. I see you spelled out on storefront windows and on the bright, unfurled awnings of this city. I say the symbols as I turn a corner. Kelly and Lee, Medina, Nardella, and O'Connor. When I peer into the woods, I see a thick tangle where letters are hidden, as in a puzzle concocted for children. Parker and Quigley in the twigs of an ash. Rizzo, Schubert, Torres, and Upton, secrets in the boughs of an ancient maple. Names written in a pale sky. Names rising in the updraft amid buildings. Names silent in stone, or cried out behind a door. Names blown over the earth and out to sea. In the evening, weakening light, the last swallows. A boy on a lake lifts his oars. A woman by a window puts a match to a candle. And the names are outlined on the rose clouds. Vanacore and Wallace. Let X stand, if it can, for the ones unfound. Then Young and Zeminski, the final jolt of Z. Names etched on the head of a pin, one name spanning a bridge, another undergoing a tunnel, a blue name needled into the skin, names of citizens, workers, mothers, and fathers, the bright-eyed daughter, the quick son, alphabet of names in a green field, names in the small tracks of birds, names lifted from a hat, or balanced on the tip of a tongue. Names wheeled into the dim warehouse of memory. So many names, there's barely room on the walls of the heart. And now it's my honor to introduce our next speaker to the podium, Dr. Karim Ismaili, our Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs.
Thank you, Lauren. Good morning. On this solemn occasion, I'm honored to have an opportunity to share some brief remarks on behalf of the faculty and librarians of this great university. The loss of life 20 years ago and continuing to this day serves as a powerful reminder of our mission, our calling to reflect, educate, and understand, all in our enduring quest to improve the human condition. The faculty and librarians of Bridgewater State University are committed to justice and to the peaceful resolution of conflict, but also recognize that in a world marked by extremism and senseless violence, these values and ideals often seem tragically elusive and unattainable. As teachers and scholars and citizens, and with personal histories that represent the many diverse religions, cultures, and nations of the world, our obligation is to chart a path of hope. On behalf of our faculty and librarians, we accept with profound humility the obligation to engage in this noble work in the memory of all of those who have experienced loss and pain over the past 2 decades. We will always remember, and we will never forget. Thank you.
Our student voice is loud and clear on this campus. In addition to that powerful voice, today it will be further amplified through song. Up next, please welcome 10 of my fellow BSU Bears as they will be singing an a cappella rendition of Give Us Peace by Robert de Cormier.
Peace all over this world, sing for peace. Give us peace. Stop the fighting in the east and west. Stop the fighting north and south. Stop the fighting wherever you are. Stop the fighting. Give us peace. Peace in the valleys. Peace in the skies, the oceans. Peace all over this world. Sing for peace. Give us peace. Sing for peace. Give us peace.
So thank you for providing that wonderful and inspirational song. And a reminder to all of us who are in early childhood and elementary education, the importance of making sure that we intentionally integrate the creative arts, including music, into all of our early childhood and elementary education curricula. So I'm going to end by reading my Unity Daily Word. So I will skip to tomorrow's Daily Word, which is focused on September 11th. So I have it here on my phone, so let me find it here. So the title is Remember. With love and reverence, I remember those who came before me. I am blessed to cherish the memories of those I hold dear. I remember family members, friends, and co-workers who have made a mark upon my life and blessed me with their wisdom and guidance. In so many ways, each has helped me become who I am today. There are also those whom I never got to meet, but whose words and deeds provided comfort and inspiration. I emulate them by living with such integrity, creativity, faith, and love that one day I too may make a positive, lasting difference in the life of another. So thank you for joining us today, and enjoy your weekend and the rest of this beautiful weather.